Hello, this is Brian Foster on Kardec Radio, presenting the program Spiritism and the Spirit World Around Us.
Hello, this is Brian Foster on a June 10th wonderful day here, 2018, speaking to you from our Spiritist Center in Bainbridge Island. And I want to, tonight, we are at 4 p.m. Pacific, 7 p.m. Eastern, all time zones in between and around the world. And the first thing I want to remind everybody is coming up on July 6th, 7th, and 8th is the first International Spiritist Youth Weekend. And you can find more information where I am live streaming here on Kardec Radio Facebook page. Again, that's July 6th through the 8th. It's the first International Spiritist Youth Weekend. So it's very close to Washington, D.C., Tyson's Corner, Virginia. I've been there before. It's a beautiful area. And, of course, there's all sorts of sites and things to see around Washington, D.C. if you want to come earlier or stay later. So, again, I encourage everyone to sign up for that, especially for all the young people. Parents are, of course, encouraged to attend. All the Spiritist gatherings I've ever been at are just wonderful, wonderful people, wonderful talks, wonderful discussions. You can't beat them. They're a fun time for all, and it's very spiritually enlightening. And you really learn to start communicating with the other side, right? This is your understanding what is being expected of us here on Earth. And of course, that's why all of us are here on Kardec Radio, is to understand our place on Earth, understand why we are here, determine what our course of action should be. You know, how dedicated should we be to improving ourselves? Because the more we understand what the other side is like, the more we can decide what the amount of effort we should put into our life here on Earth. Because before Spiritism, many different religions and had different ideas of what would be on the other side. Most of them were quite fuzzy, right? They weren't quite there. But with Spiritism, it's bringing us concrete information, not just from one spirit, not just from one medium. It's just a multitude of spirits in different places. Of course, it all started here with Allan Kardec, the Spirits book. This is where I would encourage everyone to read this. Of course, you can find this on the EDICI website, which you click on the picture of Allan Kardec on my website. It's on the top right-hand side. Of course, you go down further, there'll also be, you can also click on where my YouTube channel is. And of course, when I do these talks, I always upload them on the YouTube channel. You can click on that, go to my YouTube channel. I put lots of YouTube's videos. I'm putting a lot more and more 3, 5, 8-minute videos on different aspects of Spiritism. So I think it should be very interesting to you to understand these little things. You know, I just been working on the video today. I'll probably publish it tomorrow or Tuesday about what is time, right? And how do spirits know what Earth time is versus their time? Of course, in the spirit world, there is no time. They live in the fourth dimension. They see the past and the future, and you see a bit of area as the higher you go in the spirit hierarchy. So the other thing is with Allan Kardec, the Spirits book, which you can get on Amazon, or you can also just look up Allan Kardec, the Spirits book, or just Allan Kardec and type in PDF on Google, DuckDuckGo, Bing, or whatever. You'll find all his books on PDF, which is great. And the 5 main books of his, I've read them all on PDF. I also bought them too after I started getting into them. So they are wonderful, wonderful to read. Now, tonight, what are we talking about? We are talking about how we are guided by spirits. Now, this is exciting revelations made by many high spirits to the Reverend G. Vale Owen, who was a Anglican Church of England reverend in the early 1900s, actually before that, but he started communicating with spirits in that time period around 1910. It took him many, many years to actually believe that he was communicating with spirits. As he said before, he said he was very careful about that. He said you'd be surprised as we are taught in the, as we become reverends, that, don't be carried away. So he was it took him 10 years to believe that he was talking to spirits. And actually his first spirit he talked to was his mother. Now, but where we're going to talk to tonight should be of extreme interest to everybody. And that is dreams. How to interpret dreams. The spirit world guides us in our sleep. And there are many instances of dreams and people having dreams in other books, not just the ones that spirits talk to Reverend G. Vale Owen, but you'll see it in many different areas by Chico Xavier, especially in the books on the Spirit Andre Luis series, where people have dreams. And of course, it's always interesting is Andre Luis will tell about the dream, and then he'll also show it from what that person remembered, right? It's always fuzzy. And that's when I tell people, when you have dreams, is maybe the main thing is to think about emotion, right? Do you feel good after that dream? Because that means you've had positive things. Yes, especially the Bible. Matthew said that. Yes, there's also interpretation of dreams. And what I'm saying is and I'll get more detail later on, but the fact is that our brains have a hard time understanding the four-dimensional world and the spirit world, and how we relate that to our three-dimensional world, right? With time. And that's why I encourage everybody, when they want to start understanding the dreams, write them down. And then you'll eventually learn how to get rid of the ones that are just, even all the mediums will tell us that a lot of our dreams are just, garbage, right? They're just random things. But then other dreams are important that you've had experiences in the spirit world. So let me get into it. So what does the Reverend G. Vale Owen, in conversation with the Spirit Astral, talk about dreams, right? So he discussed with this Spirit Astral how the spirit world helps people when they ask for guidance for a pressing problem. We've all had that. We've all had days where there's something we just can't figure out. A homework assignment from school, a complex algorithm to be designed and coded for work, or a presentation to kick off a new project are just a few samples of what could occupy our minds just before retiring for the night. Many ask for guidance from above in solving their problems. Others focus on the conundrum at hand so diligently that the energy of their thoughts reach the spirit plane in a form of requesting assistance. Astor reminds the good Reverend that God gave people minds to use, not just to receive instructions. That part of our trials on earth is to learn to solve difficulties on our own. After all, if the teacher gave everyone the answers to the test, why have the test? Right? Because we are here on earth to learn. We're not going to be spoon-fed everything. But like a good teacher, inquiring minds aren't entirely left to their own devices. After a student has demonstrated their diligence, the teacher will offer advice on how to solve the problem, hints to the path to pursue are supplied to the eager pupil. Astro recounts how he helped a person to further their knowledge. So here is a real live account of someone trying to think of something, and then spirit world, hears this and it's going to say, oh, we're going to help this person make this next leap. Listen to what Astral says. I remember that once I was impressing a man who was investigating the laws of psychology in the matter of visions and dreams. He wanted to find out what was the cause of certain dreams being prophetic. The connection between the dream itself and the incident which it foreshadowed. He applied to me, and I told him that he must continue his investigations and use his own mind. And if all were well, he would be given to understand. So therefore, what's he telling us? If one demonstrates dedication and hard work towards a goal, you will be assisted. First, the spirit realm must be convinced that a person deserves help. Also, it must be on your main path of your predetermined course of education. And once that has been established, a whole world of information is opened up. So Astral in its communications kind of reveals to us one small facet how the spirit realm guides us and cares for us during our trials here on earth. One aspect of the invisible care we receive is what happens when we dream and how they are structured to help us. Now, I go more into this in as far as how I've been helped with my dreams and what I've seen in my book, The 7 Tenets of Spiritism, how it impacts our daily life. And it's, this kind of how I started to learn to see the signs and signals of the beyond the veil, the other side, as the Druids used to call it. How do they talk to us? Especially for someone like me, I'm not a medium, and I'm not very sensitive. I mean, other people are much more, sensitive to these things, but some of us aren't, like me. But then even any of us can start learning to see the signs and signals. So before I go more into what Astral said, let me also say about what dreams and what did a spirit talk about dreams. Now this is what's so great about Spiritism. Now, thank heavens for the United States Spiritist Council, because they published in 2015 a book called the Spiritist Review, Journal of Psychological Studies of 1858. Now, what is that? That book contains all the monthly published magazines. They publish once a month, Allan Kardec did, of his meetings and different articles. And of course, a lot of that stuff is not in this book, but this is probably a lot of things he did after he did this book. And it was really interesting things. There's some things that, maybe not so interesting to people, but if you're into and really want to study every facet of Spiritism, there are, I think it's 1857, 58, and 59. I think there's 3 books have been published so far by the United States Spiritist Council. You can get that on Amazon.com, by the way. So there was a dissertation from an unknown spirit about sleep. And it supplies a complete survey of what sleep means to souls at different levels and why our dormant state is vital for us. So let me tell you what this person said. Poor human beings, how little you know about the most ordinary phenomena that exist in your life. You think highly of yourselves. You think that you have a vast knowledge and remain speechless before these simple questions framed by all children. What do we do when we are asleep? What is the meaning of dreams? I don't have the pretension of making you understand what I want to explain, since there are things that your spirit cannot submit to, because one can only admit what one can comprehend. Sleep entirely frees the body, the soul from the body. When we are asleep, we are momentarily in the same state that we shall definitely be after death. The spirits that have quickly detached from matter on the occasion of their death had intelligent dreams. Those, when sleeping, meet again with the society of other beings that are superior to them, that travel, talk to them, are enlightened by them. They even work on tasks that they had finalized when they die. This, once more, must teach us that we should not fear death, as we die every day, as once stated by a saint. All this was said with respect to the superior spirits. The large majority of people, however, who may remain in that perturbation for long hours, in that uncertainty that you were told about, those individuals go to worlds that are inferior to earth, attracted by old affectations, are to look for pleasures that are even of lower level than those found here. They will then learn doctrines that are even more vile, ignoble, and harmful than those that they profess among you. What establishes the sympathy on earth is nothing else but the fact that we feel attracted by the heart as we wake up. Excuse me. To those with whom we also spend 8 or 9 hours of pleasure or happiness. What also establishes the irresistible antipathy is that deep there in the heart, we know that these creatures have a different conscience with respect to us. Hence, we know that them not having ever setting our eyes on them. It is this that also explains indifference, since we don't seek to make friends when we know that we have others that love us and wish us well. In one word, that sleep influences your lives more than you think. Through sleep, the incarnated spirits are always in contact with the spiritual world, allowing then that the superior spirits, without much repulse, do agree to come to incarnate in your environment. God wanted that during the contact with vices, they could reinforce their virtues in the source of goodness, so as not to fail, as they come to instruct others. Sleep is the door that God opened to them to meet their friends from heaven. It is the break after the work, waiting for the great liberation, the final liberation that should reintegrate them back to the real world. A dream is a memory of what your spirit saw during the sleep. Notice, however, that you do not always dream, since you do not always remember some of what you have seen or everything that you have seen. It is not your soul in its full detachments. Often is nothing more than the memory of perturbation that follows or departure or arrival, added to the memory of what you have done or worries you during the waking state. Without that, how can we explain those absurd dreams of the scholars as well as the simplest person? The evil spirits also use dreams to torment the weak and other souls. As a matter of fact, you will soon see the development of a new kind of dream. It is as old as the one you know, but ignored by you. It is the dream of Joan of Arc, of Jacob, of the Jewish prophets, and of some Indian foretellers. Such a dream represents the memory of the soul, entirely separated from the body. The memory of that second life that I was telling you about some time ago. For the dreams that you retain, the memory, try to distinguish well between those two kinds, as without it you shall fall into contradictions and cause dismal mistakes to your faith. So aren't these wonderful things you find out? This is why this book was so interesting, is, that just communication. And at the end of the spirit's communication, we're told that some dreams can hold valuable information for us. It is our responsibility to separate the important and relevant dream from the vast majority of nonsense dreams we have. So, just as an example, in Andre Larisse's book, it's really interesting when they talk. This person has a dream, and they come, they're helping something, and how they interpret it afterwards. And then, like, I remember I had a set of dreams. I don't know what it was, but it's like for months I just kept having dreams that I was walking around office buildings, and I would go to a meeting, and I would just sit in the meeting, and then I'd go to another meeting, and I thought, well, why am I here? And now, actually, I was talking to Vanessa, and I was saying, I've had these dreams of office buildings. Well, goes, oh, that's probably the spirit world having you up in there telling you what you should, telling you something. I go, well, I don't remember anything. It goes, I just remember I was in an office building. But anyway, that's what Vanessa Angeloni told me is probably what it is that, I was getting some sort of instruction. So you never know. I mean, that's why, and, it just never, and then I've talked to a person about a dream, and this woman had lost her young son. And, she had a dream that, she saw this, teenage boy, and she felt really good about it. And I said, and then even her father had a dream, and her mother had a dream also about this. And I said, this is the spirit world telling you, first, did you feel good about the dreams? Yes, I felt, I felt great about it. I said, first of all, it's the emotion. The emotion is probably true, right? You probably didn't go to some bad place if you weren't scared. So you probably went to some good place. And then you just have to kind of understand, you have to know of what you can interpret from that four dimension versus our three-dimensional world. And then, because the spirit world was trying to tell her, this son of yours was gone for a reason, and he will either come back as your next child or have something other important. But the spirit world tried to make you feel good about it. So it's very important. That's why when I have something I think is important, is interesting, I try to write it down, and then I see, if I think it's telling me something. And then also in Memoirs of a Suicide, Camilo Branco, when he was talking about one of his previous lives, when he became a member of the Spanish Inquisition, and before that, he said he was told dream after dream, don't go there, stay a humble, he was an impoverished, like a noble family, stay humble, just, marry some local girl, don't go off and do this. And he said, I was told that dream after dream, but I ignored it. So, sometimes, listen to these things, because the spirit world doesn't want us to fail, right? The reason we're even talking about dreams is for people to get that important information so they can interpret that and help them go on the right path. Okay, so let's get back to what Astral was help guiding this person. So then Astral tells Rev. Vale Owen exactly how he guided the supplicant who wanted to know more about prophetic dreams, because this person was trying to say, how can people have dreams and dream about the future? So Astral was going to take that person and show them something about the future, so then that person can find out how it works. So this is what Astral said. That night, I met him when he fell asleep and conducted him to one of our observatories, where we experiment with the object of pertain in visible form the events hovering about the present moment. That is, events which have happened shortly before and those which will happen shortly in the future. We were not able to go back far back or far ahead at that particular establishment. That is done by those in the higher spheres. So, let me stop there. Let's talk about that. hovering shortly before or shortly ahead. So, does that give you an idea of life in the spirit world? Is that there's all it is different states. And you can see previous states, maybe present states, states that will come in the future, but not on a certain timeline. I've also read other mediums and who talk to other spirits, and I've heard that same word, hovering. Future events. We can, you're saying, I can see it's kind of hovering there. It's not too far from you, right? And so just imagine that scene. Imagine looking at a table, seeing the wood grow from a little sprout, from a seed. Someone takes that, creates the table, and then seeing the table degrade out in some field, right? That's kind of, you're seeing the whole procession of the different states. Now, the other thing is this whole thing about prophetic dreams and, the future and the hovering before. And in fact, I talked about in episode 1, the last one we're talking about is, our fate is predetermined, is that for those who absolutely reject determination, like I did, the realization that our future is known kind of rips out the foundation of your beliefs. At least it ripped out the foundation of my belief. When I finally figured out that my life was pretty well set and that things would happen, whether, it's just amazing. So that means what I found out is it meant my life on earth is set, not in stone, but only in the trials that you shall encounter. We, I, and you will have free will to choose your options and attitude during those lessons presented to you. But Spiritism also answers the questions of the ability to see forward. Allan Kardec, who wrote the spirit books in the 1850s, provides an analogy of how a spirit can see this. He says, imagine a spirit standing on top of a mountain. There is a trail in the canyons below. The spirit can see a person walking along the path. The advanced spirit is able to detect where the person was and where they are going. Whereas the person below, he or she only sees the immediate road ahead and can look to the rear to see what has already happened. So we are that person on that rough trail. And the spirit world, made up on many levels of ascension, can, determined by the stage of purity, accurately foretell the road ahead. The person who is dreaming will get to see maybe a bit of the road ahead, which was covered in mystery before. And in fact, when I talk to people, people call me and I talk to people, what I try to say is for all of us, and I try to do that every so often too, is imagine us, each individual, be on top of that mountain and look at our life, because we look at our life like moment to moment. I'm bored today, right? Or my life is boring, or, oh, I'm so poor, I can't get that car, or I can't buy that, shoes I want, or I can't go to that concert I want. I'm stalled in my relationships, etc. But that's why we have to look. We have to stand on that 10,000 foot level mountain and look down and see we're just on this. We're immortal, right? The sun will burn out and we'll still be alive. Think about that for a second. So just think of yourself as you're just on this arc. And if you're bored, hey, it's going to happen. If you're not where you want to be, follow your conscience. Just try to be. Look, when you leave this physical life, you have nothing but what's the improvements you made up here. The worst thing that can happen, a lot of these people that are kind of go backwards, create more errors that they have to atone for, are park. Right? They use that a lot in spiritism. Don't park yourself. You can park yourself on earth. You can park yourself in the lower zone. And what does a park mean? Parking mean is making no advancement, just kind of staying where you are, just going through life, right? And most of us are guilty of that. I'm sure I have done that over and over and over again. Is you're born, you're a child, you try to get as much, money and wealth as you can, or whatever, your big desire is. And instead of trying to work on repairing your personality and your character, because that's why we're here. So what does Astral say? So this is what Astral said. So He said, we set the instruments in order and cast upon his screen a picture of the neighborhood in which he lived and told him to watch intently. One particular item was the entry into town of some great personage with his large retinue. When the display was over, he thanked us and we conducted him back to his earth body again. So, Astro arranged for the inquiring gentleman a demonstration of a prophetic dream. Astro gave him the gift of seeing ahead so he could determine for himself what the dream meant. So Astro tells us further. He awoke in the morning with a feeling that he had been in the company of a certain man who had been experimenting in some branch of science, but could not recall what it had been about. So, let me stop for a second. So, again, this is typical of a dream. It's like, I saw these symbols. I don't really know what it's about. But just let your mind percolate. So, I'll carry on with Astro said. But as he was going about his work that morning, the face of the man he had seen in the procession came to his mind vividly, and then he remembered several scraps of his dream experience. On opening a newspaper a few days afterwards, he saw an intimation that the visit was projected to the town and district of this same person. Then he began to reason things out for himself. He did not remember the observatory nor the screen picture we had shown him as such, but he did remember the face and the retinue. So he reasoned in this way. When our bodies sleep, we ourselves, at least sometimes, go into the sphere of 4 dimensions. That 4th dimension is such as enables those who dwell there to see into the future. But coming back to this realm of 3 dimensions, we are not able to carry over with us all we have experienced when we ourselves have been in the realm of 4. Yet we do manage to hold such items as are natural to this lower realm, such as the face of an earth dweller and a retinue in procession. So Astro, what did he say? He explained the relationship between the dream and the reality of the experience. It goes on. The connection then between such a dream as foreseen and the events themselves is the relation of a state of 4 dimensions to a state of 3, and the former being of greater capacity than the latter covers at any moment a wider range of view as to time and sequence of events than the latter can do. So, we who live in a 3-dimensional world where we can place in view objects given width, heights, and depth, time is held constant as we see, right? Because we don't know time moving. We just see the state, right? Our eyes can only view in 2 dimensions, but our brain enables us to infer the 3rd coordinate. Now, suppose you're a creature of 4 dimensions. You detect width, heights, depth, and time. You see the object not in a snapshot, but in all phases of existence, as I said earlier. Now, think about Socrates. Now, Socrates made it very famous called the analogy of the cave. And in the analogy of the cave, and what I think is that these people are chained to the wall, right? And there's a fire behind them, and they can only see the shadows on the wall. So they believe that they are 2-dimensional beings, and that one of the 2-dimensional beings escapes, gets out of the cave, comes back, tells everybody, this is a 3-dimensional world. It's great. And of course, they kill him because they think he's crazy. Now, I went to that really fast, but what everyone, what you'll see if you look that up, and what most scholars say, this is about learning, and we have to learn, and how we can't see things in new paradigms, etc. But Socrates, of course, as we know from Spiritism tells us, is a minister of Jesus Christ. Socrates, yes, like the movie The Matrix, exactly. We are a logical universe, right? Socrates was telling us, first, a lot of what Socrates said foreshadowed what Christ would say, but Socrates telling us, look, you don't even understand the other side. And I'm just telling you now, this is like the allegory of the cave. There's something just so much more amazing out there. And Socrates also said it's impossible to be a really wise person in a physical body. Your mind is just onslaughted with 1,000 emotions, all the time. And of course, that's exactly true, correct? Because we have these thoughts going through us, and we subconsciously pick these up. And of course, and as Matthew said, like the movie, The Matrix. So, and that is what is the more you understand spiritism and you see, especially the information, right, from how we're guided by spirits in the book 2, what the universe is like. I think the more that I think a lot of people understand is we really live in a logical universe, and in that when we are, when we go into the spirit world, we are like a character, a personality, and we are this basic of an intelligent, artificial intelligence, and that we over time create ourselves, right, through these experiences. So we go down further. So let me give you an example. Another example, I found an analogy from Wikipedia I thought was interesting, that postulates what a two-dimensional being would think about a three-dimensional being. And I'm telling you this because this will help you understand your dreams, because you have to understand how you can't really see what you don't know. In fact, when the Indians, what they say is like when the Indians first saw the ships from Columbus, and they would look under the horizon and see these ships, they didn't really see ships because they had no foundation of what those were. Were they just low black clouds? So this is the toughness sometimes of going back and forth. So this is what was said. Dimensional analogy was used by Edwin Albert in the book Flatland, which narrates a story about a square that lives in a two-dimensional world, like the surface of a piece of paper. From the perspective of the square, a three-dimensional being has seemingly godlike powers, such as the ability to remove objects from a safe without breaking it open. Think of it, right? Moving them, it's squaring a piece of paper with a third-dimensional object. You can just take him out of the piece of paper like that, even though there's a square, 4 lines around that object. And then to see everything that from the two-dimensional perspective is enclosed behind walls, and to remain completely invisible by standing a few inches away in the third dimension. So I thought this is a good analogy. Now let's take this analogy one more step and think of us living in our lives in a 3D movie. The movie has a beginning and an end. The plot spans hours, although we as actors in the film notice only the part we are currently playing. Each scene is real life to us. But a high spirit standing outside our range of sight sees the build-up to the current scene, the result of the actions we take in our present time, and we as the actors, caught in the digital representation of the film, have no concept of the audience who hovers around us, watching our lives unfold. What would happen if you took the actor out of the movie and placed him or her in the audience? They would have a difficult time trying to understand what precisely they are seeing, and could only interpret it through their own point of view. Hence, our dreams are invariably muddled. Our brains are able to decipher the simpler concepts, and we, for the most part, misinterpret the fourth dimensional aspects of our dreaming experience. And that's why a lot of times you'll see maybe numbers, right? And even in the Revelations, the Apocalypse, they gave them numbers to kind of to help anchor, because we can probably figure numbers out. And I've had dreams where I've had numbers, and they've all eventually had. Most of them, I think, so far, it's had something relevant to me after I was able to figure them out. Sometimes after the fact, but I don't know. I could be fooling myself. So I'm always careful about that, thinking I know something, and it was just coincidence. So, although the person would say nothing's coincidence, but in my mind, I'm sure I'm wrong many of the times. So, what are we learning? So, given the limitations of our physical bodies, the man who wished to understand prophetic dreams was able to unlock a key concept about dreams and the spirit realm. So Astral summarizes his achievements. This is what Astral says about how he figured it out. Now, by such use of his own mental faculties, he had arrived at as great an advance in knowledge as I could have given him, direct. And by doing so, he had also advanced in mental training and power. For although his conclusion was not as would pass muster here without ratification in several points, I would like to know what those would be. It'd be interesting. Yet is roundly and broadly correct and serviceable for all practical purposes intellectually. I could not have infused into him more than he had found out for himself. What does that tell us? We are part of the spirit realm. Our immortal souls live the vast majority of time in a world with at least 4 dimensions, maybe more the higher one travels up, the one you ascend. Each time we incarnate, we temporarily lose our past and must live in the present. But we aren't left without any tools. We have our conscience and instincts, which I've said many times. That's always given you. There's always a link with your past lives. Your conscience, which is the divine set of laws, which we must learn to follow instead of learning to rationalize away, like I've done for the majority of my life. And we can't journey back to the other side to receive the assistance, right? So we have been granted the gift of leaving our bodies during sleep. And it is up to each individual to determine for his or herself what their dreams mean to them and how closely the shades should follow the perceived lessons resulting from a vivid dream experience. Marcia, boa noite. Sometimes, which means good night in Portuguese. Well, also I want to say, as it just reminded me, I've had this wonderful person, Anna Carolina, and she has taken, it was the Level of Planets. I have a short YouTube video on called The Level of Planets. And what she did, she's based in Brazil, but she knows English really well. She actually wrote subtitles to one of my videos in Portuguese. I actually posted that video on Kardec Radio, I think about a week ago. But hopefully she wants to do more. So I thought it'd be interesting for anybody who speaks English and Portuguese, or you have a Brazilian friend and you want to see kind of what us here in the English-speaking world are doing with Spiritism. It may be of interest to them, because it's always good. Because, basically, there's so much great stuff coming out of Brazil. There's so many great speakers. I mean, Geraldo Dutra, Divaldo Franco, Geraldinho. There's just so many great, I can't name them all. And, one gets a little bit envious, as we shouldn't be, but of the books that haven't been translated. But so we are trying to do, with Vanessa and many other people are trying to help Spiritism here, even in the English-speaking world. And I see a lot of good things coming from the UK and Australia, other places. Okay, now let's talk about the next thing, which is interesting about how humans are guided, and that is talking about goodness is to evil. What is goodness and what is evil? Now here is the spirit Zabdiel, who the Reverend Vale Owen taught mostly in the second book, in Life Beyond the Veil, which was a collection of 4 books in the 1910s. And he explains the concept of goodness and evil. And Zabdiel tells us that good and evil are conditions of attitude toward God. So, conditions of attitude toward God. Your perspective regarding the love of God determines the amount of benefit or harm any action we take, which sooner or later reflects back on us. Because we all know that nothing is black and white, almost nothing. And that there's all sorts of shades of gray, and that we are here on earth to understand these shades of gray, because our conscience, as I just said before, is given to us in life after life. Now, that conscience isn't a static member of our personality. It's like a library, right? You have the set of laws, but then you have the interpretation. And we start relearning as we mature as spirits, we learn how to interpret other things. Because nothing's easy. And what Zabdiel presents is a universe full of the supreme spirituality's love and the constant which permeates all. And when we attempt to block out the radiating love from God, this is where evil persists. That's an interesting concept. And I believe it's, it becomes obvious, but it takes a while to think about it, right? It's because God is love. And the more you read about Spiritism, you just see that's true. And, and we go off target here for a second, but that's why people go, well, I don't believe in God. How could God kill a child? How could God have earthquakes? How could God let us have war, right? All those things. But when you have a child, don't you let the child learn things, right? But sometimes you have to let the child do something stupid so they learn from it. We all know, and even as teenagers, oh my heavens, even as teenagers, it would be amazing. You know they have to learn the hard way. Oh, let me here. Wait, there's a question from Matthew. Speaking of the apocalypse, do you think there would be any time for you to have a stream one time discussing about NDEs and future events, such as visions of possible oncoming catastrophes during the transition of Earth status? Okay, yes. I will get into that later on. In fact, I have a lot of information on that. I have a book called The Spirit World Talks to Us, and also which tells about 12 different NDEs, which people saw visions of the future. And I should do that. I should do a program on that one day. But I'm also going to take later in this book is all the future of the earth. This is like in the last chapters of this book is the future of the earth as presented by different spirits to the Reverend G. Vale Owen, which is very interesting. So I think that would be an exciting topic because people in NDEs, I mean, this is what's exciting about Spiritism. That's why I wrote this book, The Spirit World Talks to Us. I also wrote a book before that, another one about NDEs. And it goes through what they saw, what they heard, and it's actually there's a YouTube video I have, Bees Trip Around the Universe. And also I don't know if it's Diego, but there's one that Diego had a lot of interesting information about the future in his NDEs, which was a really exciting one. He saw his own personal future and some of the future of the earth. And of course, when you're up there, you're going to start seeing in 4 dimensions. And if people point this out to you, you'll see that. So thank you for the question, Matthew. Yeah, and keep asking those things because those are very interesting. There's just so much. There's so much to learn and to gather on Spiritism because you just start understanding these things. So let me go on about love. This love, So what Zabdal says is the universe is full. Yes. Oh, Matthew. Yeah. Put down some suggestions. Yeah, and our comment on YouTube, yeah, go ahead, because I get notified on comments. YouTube's better because those comments will stay. The comments here on this one, may disappear. So what Zabdal presents is he talks about the supreme spirituality's love, and this concept permeates all. And when we attempt to block out this radiated love from God, this is where evil persists. This is us blocking out, right, love. So this is what he says. The very intensity of the love of God becomes terrible when it meets with an imposing obstacle. The swifter the torrent, the greater the surf about the opposing rocks. The greater the heat of the fire, the more complete the dissolution of the fuel which is cast into it, and on which it feeds. And although to some such words may seem horrible in the saying of them, yet it is the very intensity of the love which energizes and flows through the creation of the Father, which, meeting opposing and disharmonious obstruction, causes the greater pain. Even in this earth life, you may test and prove this. For the most bitter of all remorse and repentance is that which follows on the realization of love born to us by the one we have wronged. And I thought that was a great example. Yes, I mean, that would be, and you feel terrible. Right? You feel, especially if if I get mad at my kids and I say, oh, why did I get mad? Why did I do that? Why did I get mad at my wife? Or, it's just, you hate that. And imagine some of these people who are really doing, and they know they're doing terrible things, right? It will all come back to them. And they, you'll see this time after time. They'll have illnesses, and it's all because of the stress that builds up into them. Is because there's good and bad in everybody. There's nobody wholly bad. There's nobody wholly good, right? On Earth, there's graduations of everything. Even the worst person has some good in them, and that disharmony that causes immense stress. So holding back love and God's will is like an attempt to dam an ocean, right? It may work for a short period of time, but in time, the barrier will fail. And therefore, evil is the absence of love. Where love is allowed, there is good. Where love is resisted, there is evil. And I think that it helps put in perspective. If you let love wash over you and you look at everything from that perspective, you'll do good. Now, it doesn't mean you're a pushover or you let everyone walk over you, right? It means that if there's something you need to do and you let this love, but you all, because, right, God and Jesus loves us, Spirit loves us, but we still have to go through maybe harsh trials. Now, it means that sometimes you have to be focused and you have to marshal your energy. Don't be angry, but you're focused, you're indignant. And then you're focusing energy to say, no, you have to do this, right? That still means you do it with love. Make sense? So Zabdal analyzes evil. And this is what he says. Blindness is inability to see. But not only is there such a condition as blindness, there are people who are blind. Blindness is a negative condition, or less. It is the condition of one who has 4 senses instead of 5, but real it is, nevertheless. Yet it is only when one who is born blind is told of the sense of sight that he begins to feel the lack of it. And the more he understands the lack of it, the more his lack is felt. So it is with sin. It is usual here to call those who are in darkness the undeveloped. That is not a negative term, which would be retrogress. So of both, I say not loss, but lack. The one born blind has not loss of a faculty, but lacks it. So what's he saying? Excuse me. He is saying, hence, when a person commits an evil act, it is because of his or her incapability to discern the good, the correct action to take. It is the absence of understanding the presence of love and how that's influence every decision we make. We see that all the time. When, because, right, what is the earth made of? Earth is the planet of atonement. In the planet of atonement, we have all different levels of spirits here, primitive spirits. And you see these people who will just commit stupid acts, these criminals, right? Who won't even, who just do terrible things without even thinking about it. Well, that's part of their maturation right there. And unfortunately, we were all that stupid at some time before too, right? We were all that, and shouldn't say stupid, I just say we all lack that ability to listen to our conscience and let love into our heart. And they're primitive spirits. They came from a primitive planet where, it's eat or be eaten. And that's what they're doing. So this is why we're going through this planet of atonement, is to get rid of those characteristics that probably served us very well to survive many lives before. But for us to ascend, we have to modify that behavior. We have to change your personality. That's why we're out here on Earth, right? The white heat of suffering, right? The Spiritism, you see that in the books by Andre Luis, is that, it's like we're a pottery and we go into the white heat of the kiln, right? Is to remove our blemishes. So most spirits and all people are balanced with good and bad characteristics. There is not a living soul that's composed completely of evil. We are all a mixture. We travel through life committing acts that we regret. And Zabdal explains why this is. This is what he says. Yet you may say that people do go back and fall from grace. Those who do are such as those who are partly blind or of imperfect sight, colorblind as to one or more colors. These have never seen perfectly, and their lack is only unknown to them until opportunity offers, and then their imperfection is manifest. For a colorblind person is one whose sight is, in little or more measure, undeveloped. It is only by using his vision that he maintains what vision he has. And if he neglects to do this, then he retrogresses. So with the sinner. So what's going on here? We on Earth at this moment of time are in the process of developing our good sides and removing our base emotions. We are all partially colorblind when it comes to perceiving the light. We are on Earth because we need to train ourselves to fully comprehend the love which envelops us and how to channel that love for our own benefit and the benefit of others. Now, as my own personal experience, as going through life after life, I have been told in mediums meeting that I have failed time and time again in my previous lives. And how hard that is to hear that. How, it's like, oh my God, I can't believe that. And they said, failed time and time again. I don't know how many times, but it was probably a lot. And I know because I can read what's happening to me in this life, right? I know that, hey, every time I made what I thought was a good pot of money, it all disappeared somehow. And I know that, look, okay, I'm not allowed to do that. I'm not allowed to become wealthy, which is fine because what I was told is I took wealth from other people instead of leading people spiritually and helping them, I used them, right? And I can tell my personality that I was growing up, I had that inclination. Now I've tried to change that, but so that's why another thing, like one on my book, The Problem is a Solution, is that, by going through the trials you're going through, you can start understanding, okay, what did I do? I have to learn this lesson. What could I have done? So I have to learn that lesson. And that's why, you got to get back on that 10,000 foot level and look, okay, well, yeah, 2 miles down the road, you did this. And now here at the present, you're going to have to learn not to do that again. So you just kind of have to go through these things. So that's why, it's a process whereby we grasp what we have heretofore missed in our trials on earth. Our choices during those trials sets us up for where we will land in the spirit world, and our course we must follow next life. Zabdal tells us it is only by free will that person is held responsible for both good and evil in his heart. And remember, free will is a concept. Every book I've read, Vale Owen, Ivan Piera, Kardec, Divaldo Franco, Chico Xavier, free will is we're allowed free will. And I tell people, okay, you want to know why there's chaos and there's evil in this world and why everything's all screwed up? Because we have free will. If God could make this world perfect, if we were like, ants and we all did exactly what we're told, and we were like these, automatons, these robots who never did anything bad or different, the world would be a great place. But we're given free will. We're given the opportunity to learn. And that's why the planet has to be the way it is. We have to learn through these things. And therefore, through our trials, we build up a range of experiences, like a law library that contains case histories, which are used to guide the verdicts in future cases. We, too, deposit what we have learned into our conscience, hence our need for multiple lives in multiple cultures. And Zabdal reinforces this point. He says this, also, let it be remembered, what seems to be good or evil to one man does not of necessity so appear in the eyes of another. Especially this is true of those of different creed and habit of thought and manner of life and community. What therefore is possible in the matter of distinction between these two is that the broad and fundamental principles which underlie each should be grasped clearly, and that the minor shades of these qualities be entrusted to the future, where they will be gradually made more plain. What's he saying? The accumulation of knowledge is to navigate through the shady maze of moral behavior. It's not lost upon entry into the physical life. We are given infinite database of our conscience, whereas we may not be aware of searching for the correct answer. The feeling of anxiety in the pit of our stomach, or that notion that we just did something wrong, is a result of our brain retrieving thousands of years of results and notifying us of the findings. This is why we have stress. Our conscience sends the signals out to all corners of the body, alerting us that we are on the wrong track. The accumulation of these messages weakens our systems and throws our internal harmony into disarray. This is why studies have shown that people who are more spiritual and aware of their moral boundaries are healthier. And this is why we have to have multiple lives. And so for a longer or shorter period sometimes, and often indeed for some thousands of years, this was told to us by a spirit. As you reckon time on earth, a man maintain his obstinance, but no man is created who is able to continue so everlastingly. And that merciful limit which our Father Creator has placed around us and in us, lest he lose us, or any one of his children away from him and return without return forever. Therefore, what's Zabdal saying? Some of us simply do not learn the easy way. I know I haven't. Our life is not sufficient to fully embed living by the golden rule into the foundation of our character, not just one life. And therefore, as I told before, and I was told I have failed in the past. So I am so grateful for the overwhelming force of love that is slowly breaking down my walls of selfishness. And only by living through harsh realities was I able to understand that the absence of love, of caring, of compassion sets the stage for great virtue, great wrongs. My lack of virtue, caused by my ignorance, I believe is gradually being righted. I'm a long way off, but now I welcome the journey. I look forward to learning to live amongst my fellow beings with a sense of love and purpose. And the first step is to listen closely to that governor in your head, your conscience. Attempt to follow what feels right. I think this is why so many people, they get stressed and they they're on these mood altering drugs. You don't need that. Follow your conscience. Even if you become poor because of it or whatever, if you follow your conscience, your stress levels, it's happened to me. I used to get headaches all the time. Your stress levels, and I'm certainly less successful in my career, that's for sure, but your stress levels just melt away. It's not easy to follow what's right. And there's still many cases that are uncertain to most incarnated souls. But as Zabdal says, as we experience more lives, our moral compass will expand. And Zabdal leaves us with this message. Let us therefore, having looked on this phase of aberration for man's natural walking with God, now look the other way in the direction in which all things are tending. For truly, evil is but a transitory phase, and whether it passes away from its economy and whole or no, from every individual, most surely it will pass away when its opposing force is spent, and he be left free to follow on in the glorious train of those who brighten as they go from glory to further glory and greater glory. And as we shed our blemishes and ascend in the spirit hierarchy, this is what Zabdal is telling us. When, as we go through life, we get rid of these holes in our character, right? Or these bad tendencies. As we ascend, we'll be given more responsibilities. In the spirit realm, where faith and thought create reality, power is parceled out to those who have had completed the requisite training. This is why we're on this planet, right? We're being trained. So one day we may complete our training and contribute to Earth and other worlds in helping other souls rise. So I want to thank you for tonight. This has been great. Again, I want to remind you, July 6th to the 8th of the Youth Spiritist Convention Gathering. And you can look that up on Kardec Radio. And you'll find links to how to join that. Yeah, I'm sure it will be a great time for everybody. And again, I want to remind you, please help spread Spiritism. Share this video, share this streaming on Facebook to other Facebook sites. Tell people, go to Kardec Radio. Tell them to download the Kardec Radio app on their Android or their Apple phone. Just go to the App Store. It's free. Go to my blog, nwspiritism.com. Join the YouTube channel. Tell other people about it. I truly believe that Spiritism will give you the ammunition, give you the knowledge of why you're here, what you're going through, what's waiting for you in a manner that is so much clearer than almost anything else has told you. What is waiting for you on the other side, why you're here going through what you're going. And for so many people I've talked to, you can't believe how that just makes you a healthier, happier, stress-free person. It is truly amazing. It takes, and believe me, it's hard work. And I'll tell you why spirits is hard work. Because first, you learn that you're being watched every minute, not just what you do, but your thoughts, right? You've got to start learning your conscience, which is really tough after we've raised ourselves to rationalize away many things. And so this is, it's not easy. It takes study, it takes work, but I believe it's worth every minute of it. Thank you so much. I will see you all later. And have a wonderful night. I'll start with the end clip.
I would like to thank everyone for listening to our program on Kardec Radio and to point you in a direction to find more information about the spirit world around us. You can visit my blog at www.nwspiritism.com. Again, that is www.nw as in Northwest Spiritism.com. And if you are ever in the Northwest, I I certainly would welcome to have you come to our meeting on Bainbridge Island near Seattle in the state of Washington. Many blessings to all of you, and please continue to explore Spiritism and the spirit world around us.